Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. We are going to do another wellness chat today, and hopefully today I am far enough away from the goats that they won't accost me too badly. I tried to find a place a little bit more secluded. You know, they might find me, but we'll see. My fingernails, if you notice these, I have been processing cherries upon cherries upon cherries. We went cherry picking and got tons and tons of cherries the other day, and I'm working my way through them, and I figure there's no point in really detail cleaning my fingernails until I'm all the way done. So if you see my fingernails looking real rough, that is why. In the video today, I'm going to be talking about some things that maybe you don't want to hear if you're considering trying the new sugar diet or sugar fasting, or even just upping your carbs, going a little bit higher carb. I'm going to share some of my own experience and some thoughts about that transition. Before we get into the chat, I want to say a big thank you to a new sponsor of the channel, and that is AG1. As I have been making changes to my diet over the last year and a half, I have tried to remain extremely conscientious of nutrient intake. I really want to make sure that I'm replenishing my daily nutrients and staying nourished. And one of the ways that I am doing that now is by adding AG1 to my daily routine. Now, AG1 is a new sponsor of the channel, but they are not new to our house. We have been users of AG1 for over 3 years now. And if you have been around for that long watching my channel, you may remember me doing some videos about my experience with AG1 back then. My husband has been a religious user of AG1 for over 3 years. He says it supports his energy and has improved his digestion, and he just plans on taking it forever. It really has been a great thing for us to add to our routine just to make sure we're filling in any of those nutrient gaps left by our diet. If you are interested in giving AG1 a try, you can get started for less than $3 a day with one of their subscriptions. And if you use my link, which is drinkag1.com/indigo, you can get over $70 worth of free stuff added to your subscription order. You'll get the canister and the scoop for the bulk bag. You'll get a bottle of D3K2 drops, and you'll also get 5 free travel packs. These are super convenient for traveling, of course, if you're on the go, and they don't even have to be refrigerated. So head to the link in my description or scan the QR code if you want to check AG1 out. Thanks again to AG1 for sponsoring the video today. So as we're chatting today, I just wanted to remind everybody that I am just sharing my own personal journey and kind of talking through my own thoughts about things, and nothing I say should be seen as prescriptive or that I am trying to get anybody else to follow what I do. I love watching other people's journeys, and I get tons of inspiration from watching them, but there's no one in particular that I just follow and do everything the way they do, and I absolutely would not expect anyone to do that with my own journey. So I just wanted to put that out there in the beginning here. Just listen with a grain of salt, take what is helpful to you or inspirational to you, and absolutely leave the rest. So what I want to chat about in this video is how the way we are currently eating or have been eating in the recent past and our current or recent lifestyle can affect the response we get from the changes that we make to our diet and lifestyle. I talk about context all the time on my channel and how important context is, and the context around if you're making a change to your diet, the context would be the state your body is in before you start that diet. I hope this will become more clear as I go on, but I wanted to tell a quick story about an experience I had back when I went high-fat keto probably 11 years ago. It was back when keto first became a thing. Before that, it was just low carb or Atkins. And when the term keto, I know ketosis has been around for a long time, but the name of the diet became keto. And I jumped on board with that. And I, followed the high fat message and the moderate protein message. There was a thing that went around back then that was like, too much protein turns to chocolate cake in your body. I was in the low carb world at that point. And so I was on board with the low carb message, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do keto the right way. And so I moderated protein. I bumped my fat up super high, kept my carbs at rock bottom. And this is also when I first started testing my blood sugar, and I was on the bandwagon of we want to keep our blood sugar low. And the way to do that is to reduce the carbs in your diet. If you have carbs, your blood sugar goes up. So it just makes sense that the fewer carbs you have, the less your blood sugar will rise. And then also with the moderated protein, that was also supposed to help with the lowering of the blood sugar. So I was checking my blood sugar religiously, trying just to keep it really, really low as possible. And I've told the story about my high fat, moderate protein keto experience at that point. My appetite got way out of control and I just felt horrible. And I remember there was one day where I had been, being really strict, and I was making butternut squash for the family, just roasted butternut squash. And I was like, oh, this looks so good. I'm going to splurge and I'm going to have some butternut squash. I didn't think that would be bad at all. And so I went ahead and had a moderate serving of butternut squash at my meal. And I remember checking my blood sugar after, and it had spiked to the moon. I don't remember the exact number, but it was very high. And I just remember being so incredibly discouraged and thinking how broken my body was and how I'm just never going to be able to touch even a butternut squash for the rest of my life. I'm going to be eating, this super high fat, lower protein. And I had already been at the point of feeling so bad on the diet and so just depleted and hungry, because fat just does not satiate me the way it does for some people. I can eat thousands and thousands of calories of fat and not feel satiated. And so I just remember being in the depths of despair, realizing that my body was so broken, it couldn't even have butternut squash. What I didn't realize then is that the diet that I had been on was directly correlated with that spike in glucose from eating that serving of butternut squash. The point that my body is now, and my body is the same body even though it is older, my body now can eat more than 100 grams of carbohydrates in a meal, and even more than 100 grams of sugar in a meal from things like juice and smoothies and fruit. This fly really wants to be in the video. And my blood sugar does not spike as high now from all of those carbs as it did from that small serving of butternut squash back then. So the thing that is empowering to me about this, and something that I wish that I could go back and tell myself that night after that butternut squash experience, is that I actually have some power to change the way my body responds to things. And it's not just something that I need to internalize as a defect in myself, but it was a sign that what I was doing wasn't aligning with blood sugar regulation if I wanted to have things in my diet like butternut squash. Now, for those that have decided that they are happy staying on a keto or carnivore diet long term, I totally get that choice. But what I found for myself is that if I were to choose to eat that way, I was choosing to have an exaggerated response when I did eat even vegetables. I remember doing a what I eat in a day video with my CGM on back in my ketovore days, and I found that Brussels sprouts kind of spiked up my blood sugar. Not anything dramatic or anything like that, but I was like, oh, maybe Brussels sprouts are a bad food for me. And then now looking back on that, I'm like, oh wow, my body was just in a very different place. And so again, choosing to be in that place because of other reasons, food addiction or different things or autoimmune diseases, that's totally reasonable. And I understand why people would make that choice. But what I want to communicate and what I want to make sure that I remember is that it's not, I'm not a victim of that blood sugar response. It's not that, or I'm not a victim of the food. Maybe that's a better way to say it. The food didn't cause it. even though in that specific instance, that was the trigger. But the diet that I was on before that is probably more like the root cause. So of course you can go down the road of removing all of the triggers, but what I found is when I changed my diet, well, I did a lot of things like healing my gut and working on nutrient deficiencies and then adding in carbs, that actually changed my body in such a way that I no longer have, those foods are no longer triggers of those super high blood sugar spikes. The food didn't change, but something about my body changed, and my body now responds differently to that same food. So I've seen some videos recently, several videos from people in the keto and carnivore world that have decided to jump on the sugar diet. And, you know, it's something fun and different and new. So I totally understand the desire to just try something different out. But a lot of people coming from that more keto, low carb diet haven't had the best time of it. And me looking at it, knowing my experience with how my body was low carb versus how my body is now after having slowly transitioned to higher carb, I totally understand. And I'm imagining myself back in that day when my blood sugar spiked up from that little serving of butternut squash, and imagining what would have happened if I had jumped into the sugar diet at that point. It would have been a disaster. It would have been an absolute disaster. My appetite would have been totally out of control. My gut probably wouldn't have handled it very well. I know my blood sugar would have been insane. It would have been to the moon, and I probably would have felt awful. So contrasting that with where I'm at now, where I had slowly worked my way up to 200 grams of carbs, and then jumping into the sugar diet, my experience with it was completely different than what it would have been back then. And the difference is my body. The difference is not the sugar diet. The difference is where my body was, you know, when I started it, or when I pretend started it back in the day. And my transition to having my body function well with carbs again took a long time. It is not an overnight process. It's not, for me, it was not like a 30-day process. It wasn't even a 60-day or 90-day process. I slowly upped my carbs to around 100, and then I was there for probably 4 to 6 months before I slowly started upping my carbs to around 200, and then I was there for 4 to 6 months. And I will say in that time, it probably took 6 to 8 months in all before my appetite regulated. It was not easy as far as, and I talked about this in another video about the hardest thing about adding carbs in. I'll put the video up in the cards if I can remember. But it was that uncertainty. It was a really hard time because I was adding the carbs in, but I still had all the voices of, you know, this is going to spike your blood sugar and feed cancer and do all the terrible things, glycation. And so I had all of that in my mind. And then my appetite on top of that, it took a while to regulate. And I had to go through a period of just not restricting at all. I felt allergic to restriction. Like anytime I thought about trying to restrict or reduce or anything like that, I was just like, I can't do it. And I felt really strongly that my body needed to be nourished, and I needed to, you know, honor that and really go through like a refeeding time, which is very tricky to do because you don't want to just gain 100 pounds. I definitely don't. And thankfully I didn't. I did gain some, but it was pretty minimal, kind of at the top end of my range that I kind of was going in between. So I was very thankful for that. It would have been a lot harder if, you know, the scale had just kept going up. But thankfully my body allowed me to eat without restriction. And I'll say that didn't mean going to fast food and garbage processed food. It meant eating whole foods without restriction. And that included fat and protein and carbs. And I think that if I had tried starting the sugar diet anywhere in that 6 to 8 months, it probably wouldn't have been as good, or my body wouldn't have responded as well as it did when I started it a couple of months ago. I had really gotten to a place where my appetite was regulated. I feel like my body felt safe. All of the good markers of a high metabolism were there, like my temperature being high. I had, like low stress, signs of stress. My sleep was really good. So I feel like I got my body to a point where transitioning to the sugar diet or a higher carb, lower fat, I didn't have all of those negatives coming along with it because I had already done that slow work of transitioning. So this is probably what you don't want to hear if you are considering trying to add more carbs to your diet, or doing the sugar diet, which I don't necessarily recommend, or working your way to a higher carb, lower fat to see how you feel. My recommendation is go really slow. And I know that when there's some new, shiny, trendy diet out there, you want to jump on it. I feel that. I am the same way. And it kind of worked out perfectly for me that I had already done that work of transition when the sugar diet became popular. And so I was able to experiment with my version of it without having to take all this time to transition. So my encouragement to those who maybe are in the keto and carnivore world, but they're looking for something different, if they're having issues, and I know not everyone is, and not everyone has to make any kind of transition like this. So if you are perfectly happy with your keto and carnivore lifestyle, I'm thrilled for you, and you should keep doing whatever makes you feel your best. But I know from my comments that there are people out there that are struggling and would like something different. And my discouraging encouragement to you is that it might be slow. And, maybe that helps put some perspective on it, where you're not looking for perfect health in 30 days. But if you really are serious about doing something different, and that something different is maybe adding more carbs to your diet, just buckle in for the long term. It can take a long time, like it did for me, but that does not necessarily mean that the journey is not worth taking. I am so grateful for the journey that I have gone on over the last 2 years, healing my gut, nutrient deficiencies, slowly adding in carbs. I will also throw in there red light therapy. That has been another huge key in my health journey. But those things, and probably more as well, have all gotten me to where I'm at today, where I feel really, really good, better than I felt in a long time. And I absolutely wouldn't trade that journey for the world. Okay, I hope that was interesting or inspirational. Definitely not prescriptive, but just trying to get my thoughts out there. And also, this is not directed at any specific keto or carnivore influencer who has shared their experience with the sugar diet or going higher carb. Like I said at the beginning, I love learning from people's experience and watching other people's journeys. They are so inspiring and encouraging to me. And it was really helpful for me when I was thinking about where my body used to be on keto and carnivore, and kind of seeing myself in their journey. If I had tried this 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 11 years ago when I was keto, that, I can only imagine that I would have had that exact same reaction or worse. So anyways, not directed at anyone in particular, but just, my overall thoughts about my own journey and experience, and we'll just leave it there. Thanks again for hanging out in this wellness chat. Don't forget to head down to the description or scan the QR code to check out AG1 if you are interested.